Good evening, Glory House International Ministries. We are extremely excited to have a little bit of a young adult planted takeover. So we just wanted to start by saying thank you for tuning in. We hope that tonight is just another night for us to grow and just to learn more about what God is really doing in this time. And so we wanted to do something kind of different, because as young adults, we're always kind of put on the spot, especially by older generations and younger generations, because we're kind of the in-between, and we're always put on the spot. What do you think, what do you think the church will look like in later days? Because there's a lot of churches that are starting to really cater to a lot more, millennial kind of style. And and so we wanted to talk a little bit about how we feel the direction of the church is moving as a whole, not our church, by itself, but like the whole church body across the world. We wanted to talk about kind of, just with everything going on with COVID and with just all of these crazy things that we see going on. We really just wanted to take some time and talk about how we think things are going and what we can do as a millennial generation to help push the church hard into what God is calling us to do. So tonight I have with me Connor, who is back from Texas.
Hello, everyone.
And then I also have our wonderful sound man, Alex, and his beautiful girlfriend, Miss Haley. And so we just decided, to just take some time to chat about some things and see where God goes with this. We did a little bit of prep, but we really just wanted the Spirit to be what's leading this. So we're going to dive right in. So we're going to start off with, Alex, we'll start with you.
Okay.
So the first question that I kind of wanted us to toss back and forth is, what do you think the church will look like after all of this is over? So, and that's meaning once we get everybody back into church and, a lot of the restrictions have been lifted and things like that, what do you think the church will look like?
I think the church, especially our church, but it's going to see a lot of growth. There's a lot of people watching now online, and there's people that have access to what our church has to offer that they wouldn't have access to just driving by the road. A lot of people don't think to just walk in or to Google someplace until they actually need it. And so with no place to go, people have actually needed a live stream.
Absolutely.
So we've, well, you could attest to it, we've probably doubled in viewership since this started.
Oh,
just online.
Yeah.
So I imagine more chairs out here, more people actually here and in seats, and it's going to be fantastic. And something else that I've been talking to your dad about, and I've talked to you about it too, is right before COVID hit, I was really feeling like I needed to go out and just talk to people about Jesus. Mm-hmm. And now ever since then, because I can't really do that now, I just feel like we felt like I was on a road trip that just, there's no bathroom break. I don't know where we're going. I need to get out of the car, so I feel like there's going to be a lot of Christians that are in that same position, that as soon as this is all over and we can go out and do stuff, there's going to be a lot of people out there that have just been, they've been diving in their word, they've been stuck just being with Jesus, and now they got to go out there and get it. Mm-hmm. And they won't be able to handle just sitting still anymore.
I like it. Mm-hmm. Connor, what do you think? What do you think that the church will look like after all of this is over?
So when you first sent me this, just one word came to mind, and that's family. I was on the phone with my brother down in Texas just before I came back home, and we were just talking about what was going on with the whole COVID situation and just the pandemic and what society was going. And so as we were talking, God was just really showing me that the individualistic culture that was cultivated in the U.S. has been shattered. Mm-hmm. Because we've seen with this pandemic, we truly need one another. We need to have that connection with people, that day-to-day interaction, and we truly genuinely need each other again. And so I think there's going to be a huge emphasis on not just people coming to church and leaving, but actually creating a family environment in every church.
I agree. I definitely agree. Speaking of family, just a little side note, our church has, if you're not aware, been going through a 10-week family challenge right now that we've been posting on the website and on Facebook and Instagram. And it's been I know it's been interesting. I've talked to a couple people that said that they've been, walking through it with their family every day, but it's not too late for you to tune in and get in on that. And so just check out Facebook and Instagram and the website, and we have an updated family challenge every week. But I don't want to miss Haley. So Haley, what do you think the church will look like?
I think it's going to be just in general, I think it's just going to be hard because I think a lot of people are going to be like, I'm used to being at home and I don't want to do that. And I think kind of part of what we were talking about earlier, or what you said anyway, about how like people are going to want to be like in here. They're going to want to be around people, which is true. I think that's going to happen for sure. But I think another part of it is now that we have added live streaming, I think it's a tool and I think it's great. But I do think that it's going to allow people to kind of get used to the church. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically like feel like if they haven't come to the church, a lot of times you feel uncomfortable, and that's why you don't want to come to churches, because you're not sure. And I think in this point, people are probably going to be like, okay, well, I've been tuning into this same church, and it's going to be different, obviously, being around people, and I think that's great, but I feel more at home with this church now that I've been around it and have been watching it and that kind of thing. They'll feel probably better about coming to church and actually being here and with people. And I think, as we enjoy people and kind of, that whole unity thing and joining them as family, I think we should definitely, I know that we're not really supposed to be doing the hugging thing, but go all in. Yeah, just... Yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah, I definitely, for me, I think the thing that I've really been thinking about is, I've looked at the empty seats every week. And for me, that's heartbreaking because I love being with people and I love being with my church family because I do look at them as extended family. And so for me, the biggest thing that I really hope is pushed in our churches after all of this is that we have to remove the mask of fear. We have to remove we need to use wisdom, but we need to be able to say, I believe that my God is bigger than all of this and follow through on it. Because I think one of two things can really happen with the church after all of this. We can just choose to accept whoever comes, or we can really push past all of it and say, no, I'm not happy with just having the bare minimum. I need to know that these people that we've seen on live stream can also get what they need to get by being in a group of believers. Yeah. And so for me, I'm just really praying that the church as a whole across this entire world really steps up to the plate and becomes the family that people need in this moment. So something else that I wanted to talk to you guys about a little bit, because this time during quarantine has been weird and awkward for everyone involved. There is not a person who could say that, oh yeah, from start to finish, just smooth sailing. And so I wanted to ask you guys, and I'll actually start with Haley this time.
Okay.
And I want to know, how has your personal walk with God changed during all of this?
I so want to be that person that's like, oh my gosh, I had so much time with Jesus. And it's like, I had a lot of time with him, but for me, I struggled. I really honestly struggled. It was like, I have all of this allotted time to do things and read my Bible and be involved. And for whatever reason, it got harder for me to sit down and actually be like, oh, I can read this now. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So then, for me, it's not that my relationship with the Lord hasn't changed. It has. It's grown just differently than I was expecting it to. I think it definitely changed because I wasn't thinking, I was forcing myself to do so. During the week before, when I had everything scheduled, I felt like I was more intentional with my reading. Whereas now, when I had all this time, I'm like, oh, well, I have so much time, I can just kind of pick pieces out and kind of just, salt and pepper it throughout my life. But, it was hard. It was harder. I want to be that person that says, oh my gosh, I'm so much better now, but I can't because I can, but just differently. So. It's been good.
Connor, how about you?
I had a lot of fun during quarantine. So I was down at Texas attending Lifestyle Christianity University, and I can still remember it was like a Thursday or Friday before that Monday is when like everything in Texas started to shut down. And so me and my roommate Cody were upstairs, and he's just looking at me like, what are you doing? And I'm getting like the closet perfectly set up with my phone charger, my speaker charger, my beanbag chair, like everything, because I knew like this was going to be a season for me to really invest into my relationship with God. And so I loved it. I had a lot of fun, especially down there. Then I moved up here to Michigan for the summer. And it's been different up here in Michigan just because I'm coming back to my normal life, not in school anymore. But it definitely has strengthened. It's grown a lot. I've had a lot of time just to read and pray and process with a whole bunch of different stuff, and listening to the Bible all the time too, whenever I can. One of the most fun things that I started in this season was going on walks with God. I'd never really done that before, and it just kind of breaks up the routine of your devotion time with Him, and it just kind of gets you out, especially when you're trapped in your house, gets you out and just like to enjoy His creation and everything. But yeah, it's been a fun journey with ups and downs like a roller coaster, but ultimately it's been a lot of like strengthening.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been interesting because I've been thrown like headfirst into like doing what I really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love my job at Print Express doing design, but I know that my call is to be doing ministry full-time, doing ministry 24/7. And so for me, being able to be at the church every single day
Mm-hmm.
has been just a huge blessing, and being able to just do what I can during all of this. But it's been rough for me too, getting really finding time, which is so weird because I have all the time in the world. But finding time to sit down with Jesus and just be still, I have a really hard time with kind of all the time. And during this quarantine, it's just kind of like ramped that up for me, where I'm just like, man, I do not want to sit still, and this is forcing me to sit still. Mm-hmm. And so there have been moments during this that I've had a lot like clearer thought about what God is trying to say to me, rather than just all of these busy things. And so for me, that's been nice, is like I have felt like I've had clear and precise hearing. Mm-hmm. Instead of just, well, was that God? Like, yeah. Did I hear that right? Am I functioning correctly? Mm-hmm. And I've also gotten to like step into being creative again, as far as like painting and singing and getting to do worship more than I ever have. And it's been amazing. But yeah, it's been rough. It's been a very growth kind of time. And growth is always awkward, so it is what it is. But yeah, so Alex, how about you? How has your walk changed?
So mine probably did a little bit of a combination of both Haley and you, Noel, because I've been an essential employee this entire time. I've still been working 40 plus hours a week, and then I come here after 5 o'clock, 2-3 days out of the work week, and we do a live stream here, and I'm running sound for that, and I'm still doing everything on Saturday night and on Sunday morning. So if anything, it seems like my time, I have even less time available. And so every opportunity that I got to go and read my Bible, or just to sit and listen to worship music, there's a degree of desperation there. Mm-hmm. A small one, not like, mm-hmm. I'm sobbing, crying, reaching for my Bible while crawling across the floor desperation, but like finally kind of desperation. And there was a time, I've been trying to learn So Will I 100 Billion Times by Hillsong for a while, and there was a time I was reading over the lyrics, and this particular line in those lyrics has gotten me a couple of times, but just recently it hit me again, on a hill you created, so this is it hit me again, the the extents God was willing to go for me since he created the universe, not since I existed, but since he created the universe, and the same extent that he would be willing to go for anybody. And, so now I'm sitting here bent over my guitar trying not to cry.
Just.
Every single little opportunity to be with God, whether it was just listening to worship music while driving, a lot of my job involves driving, was just, there's a degree of desperation to just have a little bit of the Holy Spirit of God with me in everything. I probably read my Bible less now than I did before this, but every time I got into it, it hit me harder than it had in the past. In the past, if I'd done it 5 days a week, it'd been great, but getting it once a week, it was like, I don't know, it was a bigger portion almost, all at once.
Yeah, I think, I've just been thinking about how, Michigan has caught it kind of hard during all of this, because not only, have we quarantined for quite a while, but we also, in the midst of all of this, Mid-Michigan took a huge hit, and we had the floods, and, we had church family members that were hit hard by this, and we love you, Judy. I hope you're watching. But, and I know something that the church as a whole always sometimes struggles to answer is, why does God allow these things to happen? And, something that really just struck me, I know we don't want to think that bad things are ever caused by God, and we live in a fallen world, so things happen. But sometimes I think that things happen because they get our attention better than if God said, here's $1 million. And for me, during this quarantine time, something that's really struck me is that all of this has humbled America to the point that we've seen more people on their knees praying than we have ever seen before outside hospitals, and and we've seen more people, Facebook and YouTube were overloaded by churches that are live streaming and still trying to get the message out to anyone and everyone who's willing to hear it. And so I think, for the church, that walk, our walk has changed, where, we had to reach a point where, okay, we have to be the ones that are leading this pull to reach out to God instead of reaching out to fear and man. And I don't know, it really struck me, if you're out there and you're really struggling with, just a lot of the negativity that goes with all of this, just remember, we live in a fallen world and bad things happen, but it doesn't change the good God that we serve. And it doesn't change the fact that God can use all of this for the good of those who love him and for the good of those who follow his word and walk with him.
I think, though, also, if the Lord didn't have and didn't give it, put us through trials in life, who would we put our trust in? Because then you put your trust in this whole idea of, okay, so if he just gave me everything that I wanted and everything was great and perfect and, just how I wanted it, what would your faith look like then? Would it be as strong as it is if you had to go on your knees praying, sobbing because, your whole life just completely fell apart? What's your faith going to look like then? It's going to be different, and it's going to grow you, and it's going to grow your relationship with the Lord. And I think
it was
definitely.
like when the Israelites were having their big exodus out of Egypt. They had a dependence on the miracles, but not on God.
Yeah,
they went to God because they needed the miracles, not because they needed him. It's the same kind of issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think even this whole thing is
Absolutely.
helpful
Yeah.
in that.
And I think as a church, it would just benefit us as a whole if we tried our hardest to find the God side of all of this and to depend more on what the word is saying than what the news is saying. And I think it would benefit us greatly if, especially as millennials, if you are a part of the millennial generation and you are not praying for our government and you are not praying for this world to turn around, you need to get on it. Because we are the generation that's coming up and will be able to turn things around if we so choose. But if we don't choose where we stand in this now, it's not going to matter. But, Haley, earlier you said people are getting used to being at home. They're getting used to being inside their comfy places and their couches, and I get that, trust me. If I didn't have to leave my bed, I probably wouldn't most of the time.
I probably would nap.
But,
I
you know, that being said, churches are going to start opening back up, and they are going to start receiving family back in. So how do we, you know, especially like the millennial generation, we rely on technology a lot. So how do we pull people back in from like being used to being at home? Like, what may have to change? What could we do differently? What would you suggest that we as a church do to draw people back in to be here in real church, you know?
Well, something that Alex and I were kind of talking about earlier this morning on our drive, we were talking about like the differences what would come with that, with having to be now coming back to a physical building rather than just being there like in spirit or whatever you want to call that. But I think we were kind of talking about it, and I mean, at my church, my home church, they like to call like gatherings and things like that, they're more small church things that they don't, and they want to kind of get away from that, which I understand, and I think that's where the whole technology thing, especially as millennials, everyone's like, you are so about technology, but it's like at the same time, if you think about it, I think we're becoming more okay with not having technology, and we're realizing everyone thinks that as millennials that's the only thing we depend on. And it's, I mean, if you really get to talk to a lot of us are like, I mean, I use it, but I use it as a tool. I don't use it as my entire life.
Exactly.
So I think that kind of needs to be a part of it, but I also think that we need to get back to that small church stuff. Like, have gatherings, have more, you know, meals together, have more, you know, just moments of coming together and being as unity, which we talk about as everybody having their own gifts and being as part of the church. And I think with that, I think that needs to be more of a thing. I think more people need to actually invest in people, because you can't have a relationship with a computer screen. If you had a relationship with somebody else, like if you were talking to somebody on the internet, if that other person wasn't there, who would you be talking to?
Yeah, it wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter. So I think just definitely embracing the fact that, like, let's go old school. Like, let's have those, you know, meetings of being around people. Like those people who are like, oh, I'm going to have a Bible study at like 10 o'clock at night. Well, shoot, you're going to be really tired in the morning, but oh well, because you spent time talking with your family. And I think that, you know, just because you're not like family, you're family because Jesus family.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you. I think for me, my biggest thing is I think the church is really going to have to start thinking about, we've left the four walls. You have to stay outside the four walls. You know, it's important for us to get people back into our buildings because we can create community and be, you know, among other believers. But I have been in a place where I feel like outreach inside the four walls is just not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be a moving message that goes outside of the four walls and into the community. And you know, like if you look at the like church from the New Testament, that's what they did. They went wherever the people were that wanted to hear. And I think that we need to adopt some of that back even heavier. I mean, there's a lot of churches. Our church does outside outreach, but I think it needs to be even heavier in that we need to go, and if a community wants to hear what we have to say, then we stay and we create a community and we draw them in. We set up ways for them to reach other people in their community so it becomes a chain. And then if somebody doesn't want to hear what we have to say, then we move on. And, you know, I think it's important that the church really understands that we have to put feet on this message that we're giving inside the four walls. We have clearly seen during quarantine that getting your testimony out there, even over the airwaves, has made massive difference in the amount of people that are listening to the gospel. So imagine if you can take that off of the airways and take it straight to another human being. Imagine the fire that you can light with that.
Yeah.
Your feet on the ground situation. When I
Yes.
first met you, that was like the one thing that I always heard you say. And then
Yes.
I thought about it and I was like, dang, she's right. I guess that's something that we need to do. And I mean, I always learned to actually, share the gospel with other people. But I think now people are definitely going to be more open to it because they're like, a person. I haven't seen a person.
Yeah.
Give me the person. So I think they're going to be
Yeah.
like, a little bit more open to hearing what people actually have to say because they're like, they're more desperate for people.
Absolutely. Connor, what do you think? What do you think might need to change, or what can we do to build better?
So one of the things that immediately comes to mind is that there's nothing like the corporate presence of God. When you're together corporately with your family, with other believers in a place, all together in unity, worshiping God, there's nothing like it.
Absolutely.
There's such a sweet presence of God that comes in that moment. And two, people need to see something in us and in believers in general that they want. Like if we walk around looking just like the world, they're not going to want to come back. But we need to be the ones carrying the love, the peace, the joy, especially in this situation and in these circumstances that are going on in the world. Like, we need to have something that others want. And like, if you can walk around peaceful, if you like, even through this whole situation, the peace, the love, the joy that I've had in my heart hasn't really changed much because I know that Jesus is still living in me. Like, the coronavirus is going on, the pandemic happened, but Jesus still lives in me. And so I get to walk around with the confidence of that. And if we can't show that to people, they're not going to want what we have. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is understanding that we are carriers of the presence of God that goes outside the four walls. But then it shows people, hey, come learn with me. Come on this journey with me, and let me show you my Jesus, and let me show you his presence because he's alive. And so that's what I think that's really needing to stir up in the people again.
No, I totally agree with you. And I just to kind of extend that a little bit, as a church, if we're not excited about this, if we're not showing that we are excited, like overjoyed about being able to come back together as a family, then it's harder to stir that up in somebody else.
Come on.
But Alex, what do you think?
Well, I'm probably going to talk about this from a slightly different angle here. Mostly probably biased because of the role that I play here at the church, one of the primary roles that I play. But, we've been live streaming on days that we normally only ever live streamed on Sunday morning. But now we're doing Wednesday evening, we're doing Thursday evening. We've occasionally done a Friday, and we always do Saturday now too. There's now an expectation, that the rest of the world is going to have from us. That's something now that the church is going to have to change. You can't. It doesn't make sense to me to scream as loud as I can about God when I'm in trouble or when the world's in trouble, and then go, well, everything's all right. I guess I can just, kind of just talk about it. It's, God's all right. It makes more sense to me. Like, okay, we can scream. Why are we not always screaming then?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I get maybe there won't be every Wednesday that we can do a stream, or every Thursday that we can do a stream, or every Saturday that we can do a stream, but people need Jesus outside of Sunday morning. And, yes, you can go and put feet on the ground, and it's great, and I super support that. I was just talking about, I can't wait to get out. But the amount of people that we can hit using live streaming, using the internet, using the airwaves, is so much bigger and so much faster. It does not make sense to me to stop doing streaming, and I think that's something the church is going to have to change. The church is going to have to continue streaming more than just Sunday morning.
Well, and
To some degree.
it's getting to a point where we understand that our live streaming and doing things like this is not a crutch. It's an extension.
It's a tool.
Correct.
It's a tool.
We
For sure.
and learning how to use live stream to its best advantages along with being here together physically. Definitely. I totally agree with you. I definitely think, all these churches that have especially there were a lot of churches that spent a lot of money on equipment to do this for their congregations, and there's no point in just closeting that after we're done. So yeah, I totally agree with you. It's going to be kind of weird for churches to find a balance between, so what do we live stream and what do we not, and do we live stream everything and then hope that people show up, or do we, and I really hope that, if you're a pastor and you're watching this, I really hope that kind of like with what we're talking about helps you kind of reach out to your millennial generation in your church too, because I promise you that you have untapped potential in your people, that they can help you, navigate this. I know it's been a privilege for all of us as the young adults here to work so closely with Pastor Dick and Pat. You guys are absolutely amazing, and thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to do everything that we've been able to do. It's been absolutely amazing. But I just want to finish up with, we're talking about what things need to change and how they should change, but I really just want us to just real quick finish up with why. Why is it important to be at church in person? Why even bother after all of this? And I just kind of wanted to start off with something real quick. In Hebrews 10, we see a section, verses 19 through 25. And it's entitled, "Hold Fast to Your Confession." And in verse 19, it just says, "Therefore, brethren, having boldness to enter the holiest by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way which he has consecrated for us through the veil that is his flesh, and having a high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as in the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching." We've heard over and over again from different people, and it's true. We're in the end times. Of course we are. Jesus isn't here. So we're waiting for that day for him to come back. And I was reading in that section where it says, "Hold fast to your confession and do not forsake the meeting of your brethren." And again, when I look out at empty seats, it breaks my heart, because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that God brought the family members that are in our church to our church for a reason. And something that just totally spun me last night was I started thinking about, so what does that mean, a confession? We're holding fast to a confession. Why is it important that I do not forsake meeting with other people? And God just asked me, well, what's a confession? And I started thinking to myself, well, confession means that you voice the truth about something, but it doesn't become a confession until you share it with someone else. It doesn't become a confession until you call it out. And otherwise it's just something that we're whispering into the abyss. And yes, God hears it, but our whole being and our whole reason for being here is to share the love of God with everyone that we come in contact with. And that's including believers that meet in a physical building every Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday, whenever it is. We, as a church body, it's important for us to come back together because we need the support of each other. Yeah, we can talk to each other on FaceTime and we can do live streams, but it's that physical connection with someone when you're just able to reach out, touch someone's hand and say, man, I have missed you, and I need to tell you about what God has been doing in my life during all of this. And, also we keep ourselves accountable to this confession whenever we come together and we make time to physically meet with one another. And, and it says right there in Hebrews 10 that that's the purpose, because we're here to stir one another up for love and good works. We're here to stir one another up so that way we can turn around, send us out, and go bring more people in. And so for me, that's been the biggest thing, is like, I will not let go of physical church, because I will hold fast to the confession that I've made, and that I've made in front of these people that I love and cherish. But Connor, what do you think? Why is it important to be at church in person?
The whole premise of the gospel is relationships. It's having fellowship and communion and being intertwined with one another in your life. If you think right from the beginning of mankind, God created Adam and said it's not good for man to be by himself. And then you go in and man separates himself from God. What does God do? He wants to live inside of us, to bring back that relationship, restoring the right relationship. And immediately I think of Proverbs 18:1, a man who isolates himself seeks his own desire. And so when you start isolating yourself and you don't come around other believers and coming into a building with people that can help push you into what God is calling you to do, you can start creating this false narrative because you don't have any outside voices helping you. And I know I've had a season of my life where I isolated myself away from the church, away from friends, away from family, and I thought I was living my best life. I thought like everything I was doing in that moment was perfect because all I care about it was me, myself, and I. And then after I got out of that situation, I look back and I'm like, wow, if I would have just actually listened to one person in my life that truly loved and cared about me, I wouldn't be in this situation anymore. And so that's why it's so important to be in the church, in the body, for that fellowship that in the Bible, the Greek is the koinonia. It's the intertwining of like your life with somebody, and it's so important, because then that's when you can start talking to things with people. Like, I see the Bible through one lens, Noelle's going to see it through a different lens, Haley's going to see it through a different lens, and Alex is going to see it through a different lens. But if I don't have them, I'm missing out on 3 opportunities to see God in a more full way. But if I don't come to meet and gather and grow in relationship with these people, I can't have that. And in Proverbs, it also says, as iron sharpens iron, so does a friend sharpen another friend. And it's so important, because if you don't have other people speaking into your life and that you're doing life with, you can start venturing off on your own path. And next thing you know, you're in misery and destruction because you didn't have anybody to help guide you into what God has called you to do. Because God didn't call us to do this by yourself. If you feel like God is calling you to do something completely by yourself, really pray about it. Because God wants you to have people. He wants you to have a relationship with people so that you can do it as a team. That's why he had the 12 disciples, not one disciple, he had 12. And so it's so important to God on relationships and friendships and building each other up and stirring each other up in the faith.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Mm-hmm. Alex, how about you?
I got to talk about it in a more, a semi-worldly way, and then also like in a Holy Spirit way, because, I look at how the Sunday service has been over this period of time, and I remember when the pastors came up after we put all the puppets out in the sanctuary, like, wow, that's so much better. Yep. It was so much easier for them to talk now, instead of Pastor Dick trying to pretend to talk to people and you just stare off into space. He had a puppet to look at. It was great. Mm-hmm. And, for me, operating the soundboard, there's a connection between me and the worship team. I feed off of them and they feed off of me a bit, but there's another connection in there, and that's everybody that comes up here and worships. Mm-hmm. What I do behind that soundboard, I do for God, but my confirmation to know that I am doing the best job for God that I can do is when I see people doing cartwheels and waving flags and jumping and screaming. And, when PK goes drums and vocals only, and I turn the vocals and the drums up, and everyone goes, woo! And I'm like, yeah! There's a dynamic there that, you can't really get at home.
Yep.
And you just can't get that at home. You need to come in here and see that and feel that. And, the worship team is way better live, by the way, if you've not been here.
That's true.
You think it sounds decent over the live stream, come on in, really. But yeah, there's a dynamic there that can't happen. And even if I'm not wearing the soundboard and I get to have an opportunity to come down here and worship, I can worship at home. I can worship in my car and by myself. It's fine, but like there's a different kind of boldness that you get when you're worshiping next to somebody.
Absolutely.
My favorite thing is in that FLC, Connor, when it's just all the guys up
Yep.
there. And we're like, yeah, we're getting it. And then Brenda gave that prophetic word about the
Yep.
walls of Jericho about it. And now every time that I get up there for the FLC, I'm like, yes, I'm part of the wall of Jericho. I don't know, it's so empowering for me, and it makes me more bold when I'm seeking God worshiping.
Definitely.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, for us being on the worship team, I mean, it's been awesome because I think we've had to get to a point where we rely more on each other and know that all of us, like, we're going to seek God as hard as we possibly can, even if there's no audience. It's really enforced that whole audience of one. But
Yeah.
there is something very different when all of us come together and we worship together, and just that loud, passionate, just going after God that you just can't get when you're sitting in your living room by yourself.
Yep.
So Haley, why don't you finish us up with this one, and how do you feel about meeting in church in person?
So it's really funny. So I've grown up Christian. My whole life is I've grown up in a Christian home and did that whole thing. And we're a little bit more on the conservative side of things. So coming in here, it was very interesting. It was it was great, but it was so interesting for me. And one of the things was I started coming with you to come see, spend time with you guys and come on a Saturday night. And if you haven't come on a Saturday night, you should, because it's lovely.
That's an understatement.
But there's times where I've come with you guys, and typically I'm an emotional person, but I don't like crying. I hate it so much because I'm like, I am such a wimp. And I'm like, this is horrible. But there's times where I would come to worship with you guys, and it didn't matter what other people were doing in my brain and whatever else that I was thinking. I just solely went into worship, and it was just God and I. That was what it was. And I remember completely breaking down one day and was in tears, I sobbing. And what the best part about it was that and I didn't, mind you, I hate crying, but I was okay with it, because then you came up to me and you're like, can I pray with you? And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to cry more, because it's kind of like when you hug somebody. Can I hug you? And you're like, no, I'm going to cry more. But yeah, sure. So you do that whole thing, but you don't do that. You can't have that at home. You can't have that relationship with somebody. And after doing that, and I know you didn't know this, but after I left that day, I was like, dang. I'm like, I want people to do that to me, and me be able to look at other people and do that for other people, and have them be like, I want what they have, what they give me. I want to feel that way all the time. And I want to be able to have that comfort, that love, because obviously God is love, but in this whole other way of seeing it through another person and being like I said, you can't get that through this. This is great, totally cool with it, but when you're sobbing by yourself, which might be for other reasons, but if you're sobbing by yourself, usually, you kind of want that comfort. And I think God obviously gives you that comfort as well, but it's different. And you don't walk out of it usually feeling as comfortable and as burning about it as, I felt that way when I came out of it. And then I was like, I need to do this always. And I need to have somebody do that for me, and I do that for them.
Spinning off that a little bit so speaking of Saturdays, there have been plenty of Saturdays where I've been like, I don't want to go. You've been at home all day Saturday, so you're comfy, but those are the Saturdays that when I get there, that, I end up hearing a message that is basically Pastor Kevin reading my mail to me, or, or I end up face down on the floor during worship, or I get an opportunity to pray over one of the kids. Like, those are the days that I feel like I get the most impact out of. And so it feels like the more that I don't want to go, the more God has for me when I get there, in a weird way.
Which is probably why I'm not upset by the fact that when I get back to things, I'm going to be like, yes, please start a blaze, sir. Like, let's just get this going.
We're going to wrap things up, and I just really feel like basically what I'm hearing and seeing from other people and feeling from other people and hearing God say is just, He's been faithful to us through all of this. He has been so faithful. We have not seen God waver at all through all of this. And I think, at the end of the day, what we really owe God in return is that we faithfully will return to this. And that, we will make His house a house of prayer and a house of worship and a house of just outreach. And so, I want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in, and I really hope that this has really stirred something in your heart and that you will be ready when these doors are flung open wide to, come be with us and really just keep reaching out to our community. And, it's a slow process, but God didn't create the earth in one day. So
He gave it a few.
I think He can, walk with us as long as it takes for us to get our butts rolling where we need to be. And so just thank you so much, and we just pray blessings and absolute favor over your life. And don't forget that this church is here for you no matter what, that you can reach us anytime. I'm sure you can find a pastor at any time that would be more than willing to reach out to you. And so just thank you, and we hope that you have an absolutely amazing night, and we will see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Don't you dare be late. It's going to be absolutely amazing because, like I said, God has been faithful, and He will continue to be. So have a good night. Love you guys.
Amen.